Welcome to Belmont Author Spotlight. I'm your host, Joanna Juvelis, filling in today for our regular host, Anne-Marie Mahoney. The Belmont author we are spotlighting today happens to be a friend of mine, a well-respected member of the Greek American community, George Danis. He recently published a memoir, which has achieved bestseller status on Amazon. The memoir is called Go Far, Give Back, Live Greek. Congratulations, George, and welcome.
Thank you very much, Anne. It's a pleasure to be here. And thank you again for inviting me in this wonderful place of Belmont Media.
It's an honor to have you here. Now, before we get into the book, which I read and I really enjoyed, I'd love to tell our viewers a little bit more about you. So, where were you born?
I was born in Greece in an island called Evia, and the village is called Mili, is close to a town of Karistos. And a family was a farmers. We had a small farm and we also had a factory that made flour from a water mill that ran by water.
Really?
It was very interesting in those days. We didn't need any energy. We used the natural resources and were able to survive, my parents and three brothers of mine.
You lived a very simple life, and maybe people would say that you were poor.
Very poor.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, like so
very
many.
frugal, very poor.
Right.
We lived from the farm, and that was our main source of food and everything that it sustains yourself. We had olive oil, one of the best things, and we had few goats and sheep that and a lot of chickens. My mother used to raise a lot of chickens, but it was a very poor, very simple, very farm-like life.
Now, how long have you lived in America?
I came in America in '61, legally that is.
Legally, and we will get into that.
And I've been here since. How
many years is that?
That was in 1961.
Okay,
Is
okay.
63 years and counting.
And counting.
And I always lived around the area. I lived in Watertown.
Yeah.
My first landing was in Belmont. I had a cousin of my mother's that lived on Sharp Road of
right.
Washington.
That's
And
right.
I landed there. He picked me up from the South Station, and I lived there for a few weeks. And after that, I got in a room on Dexter Avenue in Watertown off Main Street. And I worked at Town Diner, which is very
you worked
close
at Town Diner,
from
and
here.
I read about that in the book. So yeah, you started out your work when you first came to America was in the restaurant business.
That was the only place where I could find a job,
Yeah.
especially with no English.
Right.
And the people there were very, very kind to me, and really across the spectrum of American people were very, very kind to me, and both the Greek and community and the American community.
And when did you move to Belmont? Because you currently live in Belmont.
Oh, I moved to Belmont 2018.
Okay.
We built a house,
Yes.
my wife and I.
Yes. You're married to Karen. She's a lovely woman.
Thank you.
And I know you have 4 grown children and 9
Grandchildren.
grandchildren.
Yeah.
Are they all grown too? How old is the youngest one?
The youngest one is 9 years old, and the oldest is 32 years old.
Oh, okay.
And so there's a big spread.
That's great.
Very fun and nice children. All some of them are working, some of them in school.
Yeah.
But they are really a lot of fun.
That's great. That's great. Now, are you retired now?
I don't understand retirement. What does it mean?
So what do you do for work?
I manage two companies that I have started, I acquire, and that's something that I love. So I'm very busy,
Yes.
always communicating and training and
Right.
in some ways lecturing people how to do better, how to be trained better. And I also leave them alone. I have a factory in Indiana, a factory in Pennsylvania, in Connecticut, Massachusetts, in New Bedford, Massachusetts, all Hudson and New Bedford. And they are on their own, pretty much. They report on a daily basis. Specific areas that I need to know, they need to be aware of their results, and
Right.
it works out very nicely.
And you manufacture, all your companies, I could be wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, manufacture plastic parts?
We manufacture plastic for the medical industry, the industrial industry, electronics, and several different other, some
Okay.
for the Defense Department. And
Right. So what can you tell me about, what can you tell our viewers about the memoir? What is it about?
Well, I always look at how things can improve and what we are missing by not really working together, train each other, debating each other if you must, is part of democracy. So all these years that I started, including and before I came to the United States, when I was in Greece in school, I was selling cloth from door to door on weekends, and that's also in the book. So really, I enjoy dealing with people, dealing with customers, and I don't do it because I want to make money, which that is byproducts of a good job, a good service that you give to your clients. And so all the experience, both from my early years in a farm growing up with three brothers, and there was two half brothers, older, 12 and 13 years older than me, and I have a younger brother. And so we were a family, even though they were from another father. And so to me, that is something that we're missing. When I first came to the United States, that was part of the culture of the community, and that has really moved away, and we are sort of chasing and running from each other.
Right.
And so I thought that thinking throughout the years, and always wanted to get my story out, even though when you talk with people, and a lot of these stories have been talked and told people all over, but putting it on paper, it's more somewhat serious and more, I guess, authentic. It doesn't erase, you cannot take it back. And so I'm really, so when I started with the book, I didn't work to get anything except just to get my message out. And that was also part of my life. When I came here, I got very involved with politics.
Yes.
To me, democracy is part of the citizenship, and that part of citizenship has to get involved. If we don't get involved, that means we are really part-time. We're just the visitors rather than full-time citizens. So I got very involved with politics, from obviously the first ones were the Dukakis from the Greek community, then Tsongas, and then I got involved with Tip O'Neill. It was on my district when I had started a business in Watertown. And so he introduced me to Kennedy. And it went on, and of course I continue on with that, and it has been a wonderful life.
Right. So this book really does talk about your life from the time that you were a child, and you were a young boy, 12 years old, and your parents sent you to school in Athens by yourself, and you spent 6 years in just one room with four walls, all by yourself, which I think is just
And
amazing.
I have to, a little not correct, but to analyze that. And now school break, I used to go back to the island. And it was a very difficult time, especially the first day, the first week. And you will find in the book that how difficult it was. Think about it, at being 12 years old in today's society, you cannot survive on the way I was left to survive.
Right.
And but it also gave me the character and the ability to move forward and find ways to survive at every kind of difficult times. In the beginning, especially then, I was somewhat unhappy with my parents. But then as I went on the first 6 months, and then I became, I met a lot of friends and people, and sometimes I almost took the wrong path. I remember my first maybe 5, 6 weeks, I ended up in a pool house, and I was playing pool at the age of 12, 13 years old.
Right.
I was tall enough. So anyway, so my brother happened to be in Athens, and he came to find me, and the neighborhood told him who it was. And he came in, and I remember, I believe my ear still hurts, pulled me out of there, and he said to me, I find you in here again, I'll kill you. And I took it literally, then I went never back. But then I went out and found, I started selling cloth and things like that. I found a job in a restaurant, busboy in those days, because it was very difficult. They used to send me food from home, but minimum food. And I had to, whatever else, I had to do it on my own.
And that's an example of a story, and one of the many little stories that you tell about your life in this book. So it starts with your childhood and the different experience you had as a child, growing up poor, then going to school by yourself, and almost getting into trouble quite a few times, George, then getting out of trouble. But then you worked on a ship when you finished school, but you wanted to work on this ship because you wanted to come to America.
Yes.
Your goal was always to come to America. And why is that? Why did you want to come to America?
Yes, there were several reasons. One was that I grew up during the war, the occupation of Germany. Then we had the Civil War, and sort of was always a turmoil. And it was, he didn't have a path or any way that you felt that you had a future. And at the same time, so it happened, my mother had a brother in Philadelphia. And so he used to send us things during the war, during that period. And I always put my mind that, that's a place I should go. And so that's how I started. When I went to high school in Athens, 3 years later, I figured to shift over to an engineering school. And so I went to Archimedes in Piraeus, and I used to commute. And most of the time it was interesting because I didn't have money to get into the train. So I used to wait the last minute. I used to sneak in the train and not to pay for it. So I was 3 years on that, and then I would look for a job in the medicine Marine because I figured that was my path and my way to the United States. And of course, again, it's a long story, but the part that was interesting is that the perseverance and commitments to your goal it was there. So every afternoon after school, I would go around and offices to see if I can find a job in a ship. And I could for a long period of time. And so I ended up back to the island on a break of the school. So my father said to me that go and seek, I was telling him what has happened, and he says, go and see Captain Marnolli. And of course, to go and see find Captain Marnolli in Piraeus is like you're trying to find a needle in a haystack.
Right.
And so I took his advice. I went there and I looked for, every office. I wondered if it was a Captain Marnolli's. And then, 3-4 weeks later, I happened to be in an office that was a Captain Marnolli's. And of course, again, if you look at it, the book is very interesting how that evolved and was able to get a job.
Right.
And from there, he sent me to Germany. I live in Greece. It was very, very heartbreaking for both my parents, my brothers, and myself. And in fact, the name of the book is, the title of the book is exactly that. My mother crying, as you can imagine, 18-year-old to leave the country, and she had the experience of her brother not seen him since he left.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
And so she thought I was going to disappear. And so she said to me, when you go, you're going to go far away, and when you make money, like, I don't know why she thought I was going to make money, then you need to give back to people that they are in need.
Yeah.
And so that has been my model since then, in any way I could.
Go far, give back, live Greek.
And
You were
don't forget,
very determined all the time. What were you going to say?
don't forget, she said to me, you have to live like a Greek, with a head up, and don't embarrass your name. That was a very very important part in those days, and today, obviously, that you need to be really a good citizen.
Right. Well, you were always very determined, George. You never lost that drive. You never gave up. Even when you were deported, you were actually deported. You came to America illegally. You basically jumped the ship that you were working.
Exactly.
And you did end up getting arrested. You tried desperately not to get caught, but you did end up getting arrested, which you talk about in the book. You were in jail. And you really also had a lot of luck in your life, you have to admit, right? You got some help from a famous senator. Do you want to talk about the famous senator that helped you get out of jail?
Yeah. I want to touch a little bit about luck.
Yes.
Luck, you bring your own luck. And you bring your own luck in many ways. And the part that is important in that whole scenario is that I work for the town Diana, and the owners of town Diana, the Mr. and Mrs. Contos, and their son George, their son-in-law Chris, they really took me in, and they like their own family.
Right.
And I stay. They asked me to move from the room that I was in Dexter Avenue to their home on Lexington Street, and I stayed with them. And so when I got caught and I put in Charles Street Jail, they had a home in Hyannisport.
Yes.
And so they called the office, the Senator Kennedy's office, which I had no idea either the name or anything. And so somehow the senator, curiosity, whatever, he came to the jail. And I only remember this, that the guard came into the room, to the cell, and yanked me out, yakking about the senator. And that's all I remember. So he brings me to the waiting room, and who was standing there? A young man, and very well dressed, and start talking to me talking few Greek words as well as the philosophy and the Greek culture and the history of Greece. And I thought, well, he was Greek, and I paid more attention. Then he asks me, we exchanged few words, and he asks me if I was a communist. I says no. So he says, okay. He says, I'll have my office, bail you out, but you have to leave in 45 days. So I says, I will, thank you very much. He leaves back to the cell. The next day, the same officers that they arrested me came and they brought me back to the Diana. And so the discussion of that, it stopped, it subsided. Nobody paid any more attention. And of course, then I went to New York to get another boat because I didn't have enough money to pay my way back. So I got a Portuguese freighter, and I went to Portugal, and from there another freighter to Italy, and so on. I worked myself back to Greece. I served there a few years, 2 years. Came back in as soon as I finished my Navy in Greece service. There's a mandatory service in Greece, the draft, the so-called draft that we eliminated here.
Yes, that's
you'll
right.
find in the book. And so as soon as I finished, I got another boat. The name was Alexandra, and from Naples, Italy to Mobile, Alabama. We got there, and of course the captain wouldn't give you money the first landing in the United States because they were afraid you leave. So I borrowed $27 from a friend that I made in the boat, and went out. It was October 26, 1960, and it was Saint Demetrius Day, and his name was Dimitri. So we went out to dinner. We had a few drinks and and so he says, I'm going back. I says, go ahead, I'm going to tour around. And of course, I went to the bus station, got into the bus, headed towards Philadelphia to my uncle, my mother's brother's house. And interesting enough, that was also a story that it was new to me. I got to the bus and I sat in the back of the bus, thinking that I was hiding.
Yes.
And so the next thing, the driver saw me through his mirror, and he stopped the bus and came back in a very emphatic and a very abrupt way. And I said, "Oh no!" I got caught, not even out of
Thinking you got caught a second time,
Mobile,
right?
Alabama.
Right.
So he grabs me and he says, "This is for the Negroes only."
Ah.
And so he yanked him, and that was a sort of an eye opener to me about that. And so anyway, back to 3 days later, I ended up in Philadelphia, and I met my uncle first time. And the next day, it was a discussion on television with Kennedy and Nixon. And I look at the television, and I says, I know this guy, to my uncle. He started laughing. He says, what do you mean? He says, you know the guy? I says, he came to the jail and got me out.
That's the guy. So Senator John Kennedy was
and he was
the man
really
that bailed you out.
Yeah.
But what I find fascinating, George, is you were arrested, you went to jail, you got deported, but you still took a chance on coming back again as an illegal immigrant a second time.
Never give up.
That's drive. Why did you want to come to America so badly?
Well, again,
why did you want to take that chance again?
For the reasons that I said before, our experience in Greece, especially in those days, were very limited, very minimum in survival, never mind succeeding. And so the United States was always, and still is, a country that is envied by the world. And this is why you have all these situations right now with the immigrants. And so that was the reason, and I was determined. As always, I'm determined to really achieve my desires and goals.
Well, that's for sure, because you built a successful career in your field, founding over 15 companies, acquiring more than 20 companies. I mean, you managed to climb the ladder to success. You never gave up. You had that drive. And in addition to building successful business, you were also involved in many other charitable and political endeavors. And one of those endeavors, as we talked about earlier, was the presidential campaign for Michael Dukakis. So how did you become involved with the presidential campaign? I mean,
Michael and I became good friends through his father. His father was a doctor, and I met his father. And so he introduced me to Michael. He was a state representative or a senator in Brookline, and then in '72 he ran for lieutenant governor with Kevin White, and so I helped him then. We became very close. In '74 I worked very hard to get him elected in the governorship, and then in '78, and of course, Michael, like all of us, all the politicians, he trying to be a little too straight, and then he lost the nomination to Edward King, and of course I recall he went back to he went to teach at the Kennedy School, and I used to meet with Michael once a month or so, and we have lunch. And the part that's interesting is Michael says, "I'm in a diet," so he'll get a soup, but then a loaf of bread he'll eat with the soup.
Are you still in touch?
Oh yeah.
That's
yeah,
so
yeah.
great. There's so many messages in your book. I'll read a little excerpt from a recent review that you got on your book. In Danis's words, "We are not made to exist alone. The only way for a person to succeed is for all people to succeed by helping others when they need it and receiving help in return. This cooperative vision for the future, as well as the fond amazement with which Danis views his own past, results in an optimistic account of his eventful life filled with incredible experiences. Go Far, Give Back, Live Greek is a captivating immigrant's memoir about how community, honesty, and generosity contributed to personal thriving."
I haven't accomplished anything except I just put out suggestions and my own personal experience. We have forgotten that the human behavior, human life, human existence is a part of the nature's way. And everything that we have invented has a basis of nature. And so really it's so important that right now we are in a parallel course that nothing can fix it except us.
You're right. You're right. And on that note, I have to conclude our show because we are out of time. I wish I had more time. I want to thank you for coming on the show, and I want to make sure everybody knows that this book, you can get it on Amazon, right?
Amazon and also Barnes & Nobles.
And also Barnes & Noble. So that's great. And it just came out in August 2024. Congratulations again.
Thank you very much.
Wishing
and
you
thank
all the best.
I really appreciate it.
You've been watching Belmont Author Spotlight. Happy reading. Until next time.